David Thorne, a millionaire, laughed a hollow, joyless sound. "My children are my only comfort now." Elena, the diligent housekeeper, offered a sympathetic smile. What he found when he returned from his trip made his blood run cold, his laughter dying forever. The roar of the private jet had barely faded from the sky above the sprawling Thorne estate when David stepped onto the meticulously manicured lawn, the crisp evening air doing little to clear the weariness that clung to him like a second skin. His 3-week business trip had been a blur of deals and negotiations, each success feeling increasingly meaningless since the departure of his beloved wife during childbirth. The vast, opulent house, a monument to his ambition, now felt more like an echoing tomb than a home, its grand halls filled with the ghosts of laughter and the silent weight of his grief. He had pushed himself relentlessly, believing that if he just worked harder, built more, earned more, the aching void in his heart might somehow lessen. But as he approached the imposing oak doors, a strange unease began to prickle at the edges of his consciousness, a discordant note in the otherwise tranquil twilight. As the heavy door swung open, revealing the polished marble foyer, an unnatural silence hung in the air, a stark contrast to the lively chaos he usually anticipated from his 2 young children. Lily, his 6-year-old daughter, with her bright, inquisitive eyes and a spirit that mirrored her mother's, and little Leo, barely a year old, whose gurgles and coos were the only sounds that truly pierced David's emotional numbness. He expected to hear their patter, their excited squeals, or perhaps the gentle murmur of Elena, their housekeeper, reading them a story. Instead, a chilling quiet enveloped the space, broken only by the distant, muffled sound of what seemed like a child's whimpering coming from upstairs. His heart, usually a steady, unyielding drum of ambition, lurched with a sudden primal fear. He strode across the cold marble, his expensive shoes making no sound on the plush Persian rug that lined the grand staircase, his eyes scanning the empty living room and kitchen. The whimpering grew clearer, morphing into distinct, choked sobs that ripped through the silence, each sound a jagged shard in his soul. It was Lily, without a doubt, her small voice imbued with a terror that clawed at his very core. He bounded up the stairs 2 at a time, his mind racing through countless, horrifying possibilities, a cold dread tightening its grip around his throat. He found the nursery door ajar, a sliver of light escaping into the darkened hallway. Pushing it open, David's eyes fell upon a scene that froze the blood in his veins. Lily was huddled in a corner of the room, her small body trembling uncontrollably, her face buried in her knees, tears streaming down her flushed cheeks. Little Leo lay in his crib, his tiny fists clenched, his face red and blotchy from crying, though he was now quiet, almost eerily so. And then David saw Elena. She stood by the window, her back to him, her posture rigid, her usually warm voice now a low, menacing hiss. She was speaking to Lily, but the words were unintelligible, steeped in a venomous undertone that made David's stomach churn. "Please, Daddy, make her stop. Don't let her hurt us." Lily's voice, raw with anguish, tore through the air, her head snapping up to meet David's shocked gaze. Her eyes, usually so full of life, were wide with a desperate, pleading terror, reflecting a fear that felt ancient and profound. The words were a direct blow, shattering the fragile peace David had tried to construct around his grief, igniting a protective instinct he hadn't realized still existed within him. Elena whirled around, her face a mask of practiced surprise, her eyes widening slightly as she saw David standing there, a silent, imposing figure framed in the doorway, his features etched with a dawning, terrible realization. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, the innocence of his children hanging heavy in the balance. A suffocating silence descended, thick and heavy, as Eleanor's eyes, usually so brimming with warmth and understanding, now held a glint of something unreadable, a fleeting shadow that vanished as quickly as it appeared. She recovered with a practiced ease, her voice softening to a honeyed tone. "Oh, Mr. Thorne, you're back. What a wonderful surprise. Lily, darling, what an imagination you have. You must be so overwhelmed with joy to see your father. You're quite beside yourself." She moved towards Lily with an outstretched hand, a gesture that seemed maternal, yet held an unsettling undercurrent David couldn't quite place. But Lily recoiled, shrinking further into the corner, her small hands clutching her knees tighter. Her desperate gaze fixed on her father, an unspoken plea echoing in the space between them. David stood rooted, his mind struggling to reconcile the image of the seemingly devoted housekeeper with the raw terror in his daughter's eyes. He had known Elena for almost a year, since the world had irrevocably tilted on its axis with his wife's departure during childbirth. His beloved Clara, a vibrant force of nature, had left him with two precious gifts, Lily and Leo, and an unbearable void. Since then, David had become a widower, emotionally distant, drowned in an ocean of grief and the relentless pursuit of business success, believing that only through constant work could he outrun the gnawing emptiness. He was a man of immense wealth, his name synonymous with power and influence, but his heart, once full of a love that illuminated his world, was now a desolate landscape. He had entrusted Elena with the most precious remnants of his life. His children, convinced she was a beacon of stability in his chaotic grief. With her apparent dedication and warm smiles, Elena had seemed the perfect solution, a woman who radiated an aura of calm competence. She had seamlessly integrated into the Thorne household, managing its sprawling affairs with an efficiency that belied her humble origins. She spoke softly, moved gracefully, and always had a reassuring word, earning the trust of David and the affection of the staff. Yet, beneath this carefully constructed facade of benevolence lay a simmering resentment, a deep-seated bitterness born from past slights, and a craving for a life she felt she was unjustly denied. She saw David's wealth as an affront, his grief as an opportunity, and his children as pawns in a silent game of acquisition. Her motivations were complex, a twisted tapestry of greed for the Thorne fortune and a deep-seated trauma from her own childhood, where she felt abandoned and overlooked, now manifesting as a cruel desire for control and a perverted sense of justice. David's gaze, usually sharp and discerning in the boardroom, now felt clouded by his own guilt. He had been absent, physically and emotionally, for far too long, burying himself in work, leaving his children vulnerable. A wave of self-reproach washed over him, a cold dread that he had failed them, that his grief had blinded him to something insidious unfolding right under his opulent roof. He took a hesitant step forward, his voice, usually firm and authoritative, now barely a whisper. "Lily, what happened? Tell Daddy." He knelt, trying to bridge the emotional chasm that had grown between them, his hand reaching out to her trembling form. Leo, still in his crib, let out a soft whimper, his small body stirred by the sudden tension in the room, his red-rimmed eyes blinking slowly. Elena's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly as David knelt, her voice regaining its earlier, almost theatrical concern. "Oh, Mr. Thorne, it's nothing, truly. Lily just had a little nightmare, perhaps. We were just talking about how much she missed you. Children can be so dramatic, can't they?" She laughed, a light, tinkling sound that grated on David's raw nerves. But the forced cheerfulness in her voice did not reach her eyes, which darted quickly between David and Lily, a silent warning passing between them. Lily, however, found a flicker of courage in her father's presence. "No, Daddy, she wasn't being nice," she said. "She said you wouldn't love us anymore if we'd told you." Her voice was barely audible, laced with a fresh wave of tears, but her words struck David like a physical blow, igniting a spark of fury he hadn't felt since Clara's departure. The air in the nursery crackled with the unspoken truth, and David felt a chilling realization dawn upon him, a terrifying certainty that his carefully constructed world was about to shatter. David's fury, a cold, controlled blaze, replaced the earlier dread. He stood, his imposing height casting a long shadow over Elena, who still maintained her facade of innocent concern. The subtle shift in his demeanor was palpable, a silent promise of reckoning that hung heavy in the air. He did not raise his voice, but the quiet intensity in his eyes was far more unnerving than any shout. He simply scooped Lily into his arms, holding her close, feeling her small body tremble against his. A profound sense of failure and fierce protectiveness warring within him. Lily buried her face into his shoulder, her sobs finally subsiding into soft, shuddering breaths, finding solace in the familiar scent of her father. David's gaze, now sharp and unwavering, met Eleanor's, a silent challenge passing between them. There was no accusation in his words, only a quiet command. "Elena, please prepare dinner. Lily and Leal will eat with me tonight." His voice was low, devoid of any warmth, a stark contrast to the deferential tone he usually adopted with her. Elena's smile faltered, a flicker of annoyance crossing her features before she quickly composed herself, nodding meekly. "Of course, Mr. Thorne, as you wish." She turned and exited the nursery, her footsteps unnaturally light, leaving David alone with his children and the unsettling silence. That night, David watched Lily and Leo with an intensity he hadn't possessed in months. He observed Lily's hesitant movements, the way she flinched slightly when he made a sudden gesture, the dark circles under her eyes that spoke of restless nights. Leo, usually a cheerful, gurgling baby, was subdued, his playful energy replaced by a quiet watchfulness. David noticed a faint, almost imperceptible bruise on Lily's arm, partially hidden by the sleeve of her nightgown, and a similar small mark near Leal's temple. Too faint to be anything serious, but enough to trigger a growing alarm in his mind. He chastised himself for his blindness, for allowing his grief to cocoon him in a self-imposed isolation, leaving his precious children exposed to an unseen danger. The opulent house, once a symbol of his achievement, now felt like a gilded cage, and he, the unwitting jailer. He held Lily's hand throughout dinner, reassuring her with his presence, trying to mend the invisible cracks that had appeared in her trust. Over the next few days, David's vigilance became his new obsession. He cancelled his upcoming business trips, citing an urgent family matter, much to the surprise of his colleagues. He spent his days observing Elena, watching her interactions with the children, scrutinizing her every move. Elena, sensing the shift in his attention, became even more overtly solicitous. Her smiles brighter, her voice softer, her demeanor bordering on obsequious. She would bring him his coffee precisely when he needed it, offer unsolicited advice on child rearing with a knowing, gentle tone, and constantly praise Lily's good behavior, always with a subtle glance towards David, as if seeking his approval. Yet, when she thought David was engrossed in his work or distracted, he would catch fleeting glimpses of a different Elena. A quick, sharp tug on Lily's arm when she spilled juice. A hushed, stern whisper to Leo that made the baby's eyes well up. A door to the children's playroom locked from the outside, while Elena was supposedly tidying, only to be opened just as David approached. These moments were brief, almost imperceptible, but they painted a chilling picture of an underlying cruelty. David began to search for answers, his mind a whirlwind of suspicion and self-reproach. He started in his late wife Clara's study, a room he had largely avoided since her departure, filled with too many poignant memories. Clara had been meticulously organized, a woman who believed in leaving no stone unturned, in documenting everything with a thoughtful precision. He remembered her habit of leaving him little notes, sometimes tucked into books, sometimes hidden amongst his papers, small tokens of affection or reminders of important things. He hoped, desperately, that she might have left a clue, a warning, something that could guide him now. He sifted through her journals, her correspondence, the books she had loved, his fingers tracing the familiar lines of her handwriting, a bittersweet ache in his chest. He felt closer to her in this room, almost as if her spirit were guiding his search. One afternoon, while Elena was out running errands, a rare occurrence David had insisted upon to create an opportunity for his search, he found it. Tucked inside a worn copy of Clara's favorite poetry book, a book she had often read to Lily, was a small, cream-colored envelope. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but inside, David found a single folded letter written in Clara's elegant script. His heart pounded as he unfolded the delicate paper, a sense of foreboding settling over him. The letter was dated a few weeks before Leo's birth, before her departure, a time when David had been consumed by a monumental merger, often working late into the night. It began with an almost casual tone, a note about minor household matters, but quickly shifted, her words becoming more cautious, more concerned. She spoke of a growing unease, a feeling she couldn't quite articulate, about Elena. Clara mentioned subtle changes in the children's demeanor after Elena started. A quietness in Lily that wasn't like her, a new reluctance to be left alone. She wrote that she had dismissed these feelings as her own pregnancy anxieties, but a persistent prickle of intuition urged her to write them down, just in case. She urged David, should he ever find this letter, to trust his instincts, to always prioritize the children's well-being above all else, and to look deeper than surfaces. The letter was not an outright accusation, but it was a chilling validation of David's burgeoning fears. Clara, with her boundless empathy and keen perception, had sensed it too. A cold dread seeped into his bones, confirming that his neglect had allowed this insidious situation to fester. The words felt like a desperate plea from beyond, a final act of protection from his beloved wife. He clutched the letter, its edges soft and worn from Clara's touch, his resolve hardening into an unshakable determination. He would not fail them again. He would uncover every truth, no matter how painful, and protect his children with every fiber of his being, fulfilling Clara's unspoken wish. The letter was the first tangible piece of evidence, a thread in the tangled web of Elena's deception, and David knew he had to follow it, wherever it might lead. He carefully placed the letter back in its hiding spot, his mind already formulating a plan, a strategy to expose the darkness that had taken root in his home. His investigation had truly begun. David, a man accustomed to commanding boardrooms and navigating complex financial landscapes, now found himself embarking on a different, far more personal kind of investigation, one that demanded a subtlety and emotional intelligence he had long suppressed. The letter from Clara was a ghost's whisper, a call to action that resonated deep within his soul, shattering the last vestiges of his self-imposed emotional exile. He knew he couldn't confront Alina directly, not yet. He needed irrefutable proof, something concrete, to dismantle her carefully constructed facade, to protect his children from the insidious darkness she had woven around them. His first step was to discreetly install a series of miniature cameras throughout the house, tiny eyes hidden in plain sight, in the children's nursery, their playroom, and even the kitchen, places where Alina spent most of her time with Lily and Leo. This clandestine surveillance felt alien to him, a violation of privacy, yet the desperate plea in Lily's eyes and Clara's posthumous warning propelled him forward, overriding any moral qualms. As the days unfolded, the hidden cameras became a window into a chilling reality. David would spend hours in his study, ostensibly working, but his true focus was on the monitors, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach with each passing observation. He saw Alina, outwardly solicitous and charming whenever she knew David was nearby, transform into a figure of quiet menace the moment she believed herself unobserved. He witnessed the subtle cruelty, the calculated manipulation. Lily, once a vibrant, chatty child, would often be sent to her room for trivial infractions, her small face streaked with tears as Elena's voice, though low, carried an unmistakable edge of cold authority. He saw Alina dismiss Lily's pleas for a story, instead forcing her to sit in silence, sometimes for hours, with a book she was too young to fully comprehend. Leo, too, suffered. There were moments when Alina would deliberately ignore his cries, letting the baby whimper in his crib for extended periods, his small body trembling with distress, before finally attending to him with an almost performative tenderness when she heard David's footsteps approaching. David's heart ached with a profound guilt, realizing the extent of his blind spot, the innocent suffering that had unfolded under his very roof, unseen and unheard. One evening, the cameras captured a particularly disturbing scene. Lily, attempting to draw a picture for her father, accidentally spilled a glass of water on the pristine marble floor. Alina, who had been humming cheerfully moments before, snapped. Her voice, devoid of its usual syrupy sweetness, became a sharp, cutting whisper. "You're clumsy child, always making messes, just like your—" She caught herself, her eyes darting towards a non-existent observer, but the venom in her tone was unmistakable. She then forced Lily to clean the entire spill herself, painstakingly, with a tiny cloth, while Alina watched, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. Later, David watched as Alina subtly pocketed a small, antique silver locket from Clara's vanity, a cherished heirloom that David had noticed missing but attributed to a misplaced item. The act was swift, practiced, a clear indication of a pattern of petty theft, hinting at a deeper, more avaricious motive that went beyond mere resentment. Driven by this new evidence, David expanded his investigation beyond the confines of his home. He tasked a trusted, discreet legal associate with delving into Elena's background, requesting a thorough search into her past employment, her financial history, and any previous legal entanglements. He wanted to understand the woman who had so cunningly infiltrated his family, to uncover the roots of her malice. The initial reports were unsettling, painting a picture of a woman with a history of short-term employment, often leaving jobs abruptly, and a series of minor financial irregularities that had never escalated to formal charges. There was a pattern of strained relationships with previous employers, often involving accusations of missing items or unexplained discrepancies in household accounts, though nothing had ever been definitively proven. David felt a cold certainty growing within him, a sense that he was peeling back layers of deception, inch by painstaking inch. In the midst of his relentless pursuit of truth, David made a conscious effort to rebuild the fractured trust with his children. He dedicated his evenings to them, reading Lily her favorite stories, his voice a soothing balm against her lingering fears, holding Leo close, feeling the warmth of his small body against his chest. A tangible connection he had neglected for too long. He started to encourage Lily to talk, asking her about her day, about her feelings, creating a safe space where her words would be met with unwavering love and belief. Lily, slowly, tentatively, began to open up, her small voice recounting fleeting moments of unkindness, of harsh words, of being left alone. She spoke of the loneliness, of the fear that Elena had instilled in her, a fear that her father would not love her if she misbehaved. Each revelation was a fresh wound to David's heart, but also a renewed surge of determination. He held her tighter, reassuring her that his love was unconditional, an unbreakable bond that no one could ever diminish. He was not just gathering evidence, he was actively mending the invisible scars on his children's souls, slowly bringing light back into their shadowed world. The hidden cameras continued to paint a stark, horrifying portrait of Elena's true nature. Each recorded moment a fresh stab at David's heart, confirming the insidious rot that had taken root in his home. He saw her, on one particularly chilling afternoon, deliberately hide Lily's favorite stuffed rabbit, the one Clara had given her, and then feign ignorance when the little girl tearfully searched for it, her innocent cries echoing through the nursery. Elena watched with a detached amusement, only to discover the toy later, presenting it to Lily with a saccharine smile, cementing her image as the benevolent rescuer. This calculated, emotional torment, far more insidious than physical harm, twisted David's gut, a testament to Elena's cruel understanding of a child's vulnerabilities. He also observed Elena's consistent efforts to undermine his authority in the children's eyes, subtly suggesting that Daddy was too busy, too important, or too sad to truly care, planting seeds of doubt in Lily's impressionable mind. She would dismiss Lily's questions about David with a wave of her hand, saying he had more important things to do, creating a wedge between father and children, a silent, psychological warfare waged within the walls of his own home. The legal associate, a sharp and efficient woman named Miss Davies, soon provided a more damning report, focusing on the financial irregularities David had suspected. Her investigation revealed a pattern far more sophisticated than petty theft. Elena, it turned out, had subtly manipulated household accounts, diverting small sums from the estate's operational budget into obscure, untraceable accounts. More alarmingly, Miss Davies discovered that Elena had been making inquiries, under a false pretense, about the specifics of Clara's will and the children's trust funds, probing for loopholes and vulnerabilities. She had even managed to intercept and delay important financial documents intended for David, creating confusion and obscuring her tracks. The sheer audacity of her scheme, the meticulous planning behind her avarice, sent a shiver down David's spine. It wasn't just about resentment or past trauma. It was a cold, calculated attempt to gain control, to usurp his family's legacy, preying on his grief and emotional absence. The locket was merely a small test, a prelude to a grander, more audacious haste of his children's future. Armed with this growing mountain of evidence, the video recordings, the detailed financial reports, Clara's poignant letter, David knew he could no longer delay. The time for subtle observation was over. The need to protect his children, to reclaim their innocence and his family's peace, overshadowed any lingering hesitation. He felt a resurgence of the fierce, protective instinct that had been dormant since Clara's departure, a primal roar awakening within him. He began to spend every waking moment with Lily and Leo, consciously showering them with the love and attention they had been so cruelly deprived of. He read to Lily for hours, letting her choose the stories, listening intently to her hesitant whispers. Drawing her out of the shell Elena had tried to build around her. He would hold Leo close, pressing soft kisses to his baby's head, feeling the warmth of his small hand gripping his finger, a silent promise of unwavering protection. The children, sensing the shift in their father, slowly began to blossom again, their laughter returning to the once somber halls, a fragile but beautiful melody. One evening, as David sat with Lily in her room, reading a bedtime story, he felt her small hand reach for his, her fingers intertwining with his own. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "do you promise you'll never let anyone hurt us again?" Her eyes, usually so wary, now held a glimmer of hope, a desperate plea for reassurance. The question, so simple yet so profound, pierced David's heart, a stark reminder of the pain she had endured. He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her hair, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise you, my sweet Lily, with every fiber of my being, no one will ever hurt you or Leo again. You are safe now, always." His words were a sacred vow, a declaration of unconditional love that echoed through the quiet room, dispelling some of the shadows that had clung to her spirit. He saw a flicker of genuine peace settle on her face, a small but significant step towards healing. The following morning, David arranged a meeting with Miss Davies and a child psychologist he had discreetly contacted, Dr. Anya Sharma, a woman renowned for her gentle approach and keen insight into child trauma. He wanted to ensure that when the inevitable confrontation occurred, his children would be handled with the utmost care, their well-being paramount. He also wanted to prepare a comprehensive case, leaving no room for Elena's manipulation to succeed. He felt a quiet resolve settling over him, a calm before the storm. He knew Elena would fight, that her facade would shatter into a million jagged pieces, revealing the true malice beneath. But he was ready. He was no longer the grief-stricken, emotionally distant millionaire. He was a father, a protector, fueled by an unshakable love and an unwavering demand for justice. The truth, he knew, was a formidable weapon, and he was prepared to wield it with all his might to reclaim his children's future. The stage was set for a reckoning that would expose the darkness and bring light back into their lives. The meeting with Miss Davies and Dr. Sharma unfolded in David's study, a room that had witnessed countless high-stakes business decisions, but none as profoundly personal or emotionally charged as this. The air was thick with the weight of the evidence, the cold, stark reality of Elena's betrayal laid bare for these two professionals. Ms. Davies, her expression grim but resolute, meticulously presented the financial discrepancies, highlighting the intricate web of deceit Elena had spun, her efforts to siphon funds and manipulate the children's inheritance. Each detail, each forged signature, each diverted sum, painted a picture of a woman driven by a chilling avarice, carefully planning to exploit David's grief and the children's vulnerability. Dr. Sharma, with her kind eyes and gentle demeanor, reviewed the video footage David had painstakingly compiled, her face etched with a quiet sorrow as she witnessed Elena's psychological torment of Lily and the deliberate neglect of Leo. She spoke softly of the profound impact such calculated cruelty could have on developing minds, emphasizing the urgent need for intervention and long-term therapeutic support for the children. David sat through it all, a silent, formidable presence, his heart aching with a renewed sense of urgency and an unshakable resolve. He felt a profound gratitude for these women, who with their expertise and compassion were helping him navigate the darkest chapter of his life. The decision was clear, stark, and unavoidable. Elena had to be removed from their lives, and justice had to be pursued, not just for the theft, but for the profound emotional harm inflicted upon his innocent children. Miss Davies outlined the legal strategy, emphasizing the strength of the evidence, particularly the video recordings and Clara's letter, which, though not direct proof of abuse, provided a crucial contextual layer to Elena's insidious behavior. Dr. Sharma advised on the most sensitive way to proceed, stressing the importance of protecting Lily and Leo from further trauma during the confrontation. It was decided that David would confront Elena, but not alone. Ms. Davies would be present, ensuring legal protocol, and Dr. Sharma would be on standby, ready to provide immediate support for the children. David felt a tremor of anticipation, a mix of apprehension and a fierce, righteous anger. This was not merely a legal battle, it was a battle for the soul of his family, a fight to reclaim the peace and innocence that had been stolen from his children. He looked at the faces of the two women, seeing not just professionals, but allies in his sacred mission. In the days leading up to the planned confrontation, Elena, though still maintaining her outwardly subservient demeanor, began to show subtle cracks in her facade. She would cast quick, furtive glances at David, her eyes lingering for a moment too long, as if searching for something, a sign of suspicion or weakness. Her smiles, once so effortlessly charming, now seemed a touch too wide, her laughter a shade too forced. She sensed the shift in the household's atmosphere, the subtle tightening of an invisible net around her, though she could not yet pinpoint its source. David, for his part, remained outwardly calm, maintaining his routine, but his internal world was a tempest of anticipation. He spent every spare moment with Lily and Leo, reinforcing their sense of security, building an unassailable wall of love around them. He would take Lily to the sprawling gardens, pointing out the vibrant colors of the flowers, listening to her imaginative stories, encouraging her laughter to ring freely again. He would carry Leo through the house, showing him the paintings, the sculptures, whispering promises of a safe and happy future, his heart swelling with a protective tenderness that had been rekindled. The children, in turn, clung to him, their small hands reaching for his, their eyes reflecting a fragile but growing trust, a beacon of hope in the looming storm. The morning of the confrontation arrived, crisp and cool, casting long shadows across the Thorne estate. David had sent the children to a trusted neighbor's house, a kind, elderly woman who had known Clara, ensuring they were far from the impending emotional upheaval. Elena, unaware of the meticulously laid plans, was going about her morning duties, her movements a little more agitated than usual, a subtle tension in her shoulders. David waited in the grand living room, the vast space feeling heavy with unspoken truths. Miss Davies arrived, her briefcase clutched firmly in her hand, her expression unwavering. A few minutes later, Elena entered the room, carrying a tray of freshly brewed coffee, her usual morning ritual. She offered David a practiced smile, a superficial gesture that no longer held any sway over him. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne. I hope you slept well," She placed the tray on the coffee table, her eyes briefly flicking to Miss Davies, a flicker of curiosity crossing her face. David's voice, when he spoke, was low, controlled, yet imbued with an authority that left no room for doubt. "Elena, please sit down. We need to talk." Elena's smile faltered, a hint of unease entering her eyes. She slowly took a seat on the edge of the plush sofa, her posture rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her gaze shifting between David and Miss Davies, a silent question in her eyes. Miss Davies, her voice calm and professional, began to speak, her words precise and measured, laying out the first pieces of evidence, starting with the financial irregularities. Elena's face, initially a mask of feigned confusion, slowly began to drain of color. Her eyes widened, a flicker of genuine fear replacing the manufactured innocence. She tried to interrupt, to deny, to deflect, her voice rising in pitch, but Miss Davies continued, unyielding, presenting irrefutable proof, account statements, intercepted documents, a timeline of her subtle manipulations. The carefully constructed edifice of Elena's deception began to crumble, brick by painstaking brick, revealing the calculating woman beneath the polished veneer. David watched her, his expression unreadable, a silent testament to the unwavering resolve that now defined him. The truth, long buried, was finally seeing the light, and its glare was merciless. Elena's initial denials quickly dissolved into a desperate torrent of excuses, her voice growing shrill, her hands gesticulating wildly. "It's all a misunderstanding. I was only trying to help, Mr. Thorne. You know how devoted I am to your children." Her pleas were laced with a theatrical desperation, but the carefully chosen words, the sudden shift from denial to a plea for sympathy, only served to highlight her manipulative nature. Miss Davies, unmoved, then brought up Clara's letter, its delicate paper now a weapon against Elena's lies. She read excerpts, Clara's poignant concerns about Elena's influence, her intuition about the subtle changes in Lily and Leo. Elena's eyes darted to David, a raw, naked hatred flashing in their depths, a silent accusation against the woman she believed had betrayed her from beyond the grave. The mention of Clara seemed to ignite a different kind of fury in Elena, a deep-seated resentment that had festered beneath her composed exterior. David, seeing the genuine malice finally break through, felt a cold satisfaction that his instincts had been proven right, but also a profound sadness for the innocent lives that had been caught in her cruel web. As Miss Davies presented the video evidence, detailing the moments of psychological abuse, the deliberate neglect, the calculated torment, Elena's composure completely shattered. She watched the clips of herself, her face contorted in a silent scream of disbelief, as if seeing a stranger on the screen. The carefully curated image of the benevolent housekeeper evaporated, replaced by the stark reality of her cruelty. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her body trembling not with fear, but with a simmering rage, a sense of injustice that she, the wronged, was now being exposed. She finally erupted, her voice a guttural cry that echoed through the grand living room. "It wasn't me. It was her, always her. Clara, with her perfect life, her perfect children, her perfect husband. I deserved it more. I deserved everything she had." Her outburst was a horrifying confession, a raw, unfiltered admission of envy and resentment that had fueled her actions, a twisted justification for her cruelty. David listened, his face impassive, but his heart heavy with the weight of her words, recognizing the deep-seated pain that had metastasized into such destructive malice. The silence that followed her outburst was deafening, filled only with the lingering echoes of her venomous confession. leaving no doubt about the true depths of her dark intentions. The grand living room, once a sanctuary of quiet luxury, now vibrated with the lingering echoes of Eleanor's venomous confession, a chilling testament to the malice that had festered beneath her polished veneer. David remained impassive, his face a mask of controlled fury, but within him a cold, righteous anger simmered, solidifying his resolve. Miss Davies, ever the professional, broke the heavy silence, her voice calm and authoritative, cutting through the emotional debris. She informed Elena, in no uncertain terms, that her employment was terminated immediately, and that the police, already discreetly notified, were on their way to formally process the charges of theft, fraud, and child endangerment. Elena, now a crumpled figure on the plush sofa, seemed to shrink, an earlier bravado dissolving into a mixture of terror and a smoldering, defiant rage. Her eyes, still burning with a malevolent fire, followed Miss Davies's movements, a silent, venomous promise in their depths, but the power had shifted irrevocably. The meticulous planning of her deception had finally unraveled, leaving her exposed and vulnerable in a way she had never anticipated. Moments later, the discreet arrival of two officers, their presence a stark punctuation mark in the elegant living room, confirmed the grim reality of Elena's situation. They moved with quiet efficiency, their expressions unreadable as Ms. Davies provided a concise summary of the evidence, pointing to the video recordings and the detailed financial reports. Elena attempted a final desperate plea, her voice a ready whisper, her eyes darting to David, searching for any flicker of the compassion she had so expertly manipulated. But David offered her nothing, his gaze unwavering, a silent testament to the unwavering resolve that now defined him. He had seen the truth, felt the pain she had inflicted, and there was no turning back. The officers, having heard enough, gently but firmly escorted Elena from the house, her protests fading into the crisp morning air as the heavy front door closed behind her, sealing her fate and marking the end of her insidious reign. A suffocating weight lifted from the Thorne estate, replaced by a fragile, tentative sense of peace, a quiet hope for a future free from shadow. With Elena gone, a profound exhaustion washed over David, but it was accompanied by a powerful surge of purpose. He immediately called Mrs. Henderson, the kind neighbor, to bring Lily and Leo home, his heart thrumming with a renewed sense of responsibility and an overwhelming desire to hold his children close. He wanted them to feel the immediate absence of the darkness, to breathe freely in their own home again. When they arrived, Lily, her small hand clutching her worn teddy bear, looked up at him with wide, uncertain eyes, her small face still etched with the residue of fear and confusion. Leo, nestled comfortably in Mrs. Henderson's arms, gurgled softly, his innocent gaze a stark contrast to the turmoil that had just unfolded. David knelt, opening his arms wide, and Lily, after a moment of hesitation, launched herself into his embrace, burying her face in his chest, her small body trembling slightly. He held her tight, pressing soft kisses into her hair, whispering promises of safety and unwavering love. Feeling the warmth of her small hand gripping his shirt, a tangible connection he had neglected for far too long. Later that evening, Dr. Sharma, with her gentle voice and kind eyes, visited the estate, guiding David through the first delicate steps of healing. She emphasized the importance of patience, consistency, and an unwavering presence, explaining that rebuilding trust and security would be a gradual process for Lily, whose young mind had been subjected to such calculated emotional torment. She spent time with Lily, engaging her in quiet play, drawing out her feelings through art and storytelling, creating a safe space where the little girl could begin to process her experiences. Lily, though still wary, slowly began to recount more fragments, her voice soft as she described the quiet loneliness, the fear of making a sound, the sting of unkind words. David listened intently, his heart aching with each revelation, but also swelling with a fierce determination to mend every invisible scar. He made a conscious decision to be fully present, to immerse himself in every aspect of his children's lives, to create a home overflowing with the unconditional love they deserved. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. Bolstered by the overwhelming and irrefutable evidence David had meticulously gathered, Miss Davies, a formidable advocate, presented the video recordings, the damning financial reports, and Clara's poignant letter, painting a clear picture of Elena's calculated cruelty and avarice. The court, faced with such compelling proof of both emotional abuse and financial manipulation, had little room for doubt. Elena, stripped of her deceptive charm, appeared broken and defiant, maintaining a thin veil of self-pity, but her outburst in David's living room had already sealed her fate, revealing the true depths of her resentment and malice. The legal system, in this instance, moved with a swiftness that brought a measure of relief to David, ensuring that Elena would be held accountable for her actions, not just for the material theft, but for the profound emotional harm she'd inflicted upon his innocent children. Justice, though often slow, was now being meticulously constructed, brick by painstaking brick, on a foundation of truth and unwavering courage. David, meanwhile, focused his entire being on the arduous but essential task of rebuilding his family. He spent every waking moment with Lily and Leo, consciously showering them with the love and attention they had been so cruelly deprived of. He rediscovered the simple joys of fatherhood, reading to Lily for hours, letting her choose the stories, listening intently to her hesitant whispers, drawing her out of the shell Elena had tried to build around her. He would hold Leo close, pressing soft kisses to his baby's head, feeling the warmth of his small hand gripping his finger, a silent promise of unwavering protection. The sprawling gardens, once a backdrop to his grief, now became a playground for laughter, where Lily chased butterflies and Leo gurgled at the vibrant colors of the flowers. David made sure their days were filled with light, with warmth, with the gentle rhythm of a family healing, slowly but surely reclaiming the peace and innocence that had been stolen. He was not merely a father now. He was a steadfast anchor, a beacon of unconditional love, guiding his children back into the light. The legal system, with its wheels turning slowly but surely, delivered its final verdict on Elena. The overwhelming evidence, meticulously gathered by Ms. Davies and corroborated by Dr. Sharma's expert testimony on the psychological impact of Elena's actions, left no room for leniency. Elena was found guilty of grand theft, fraud, and a pattern of child endangerment. Her carefully constructed facade of devotion and innocence finally shattered beyond repair. The judge, in his pronouncements, spoke not just of financial crimes, but of the profound breach of trust and the emotional devastation inflicted upon two innocent children. Elena, stripped of her elegant clothes and her manipulative charm, stood a hollow, defiant figure, her eyes still holding a flicker of the cold resentment that had consumed her. Her punishment, a significant prison sentence, served as a stark, undeniable testament that even the most insidious forms of malice would eventually face justice, that the truth no matter how long it took to surface, would ultimately prevail. David, attending the final proceedings, felt a quiet sense of closure, not of triumph, but of a heavy burden finally lifted, a promise to Clara and his children fulfilled. He knew it wouldn't erase the past, but it ensured a future free from her shadow. Back at the estate, a fragile but persistent peace began to settle over the grand halls. David, now fully present, immersed himself in the delicate art of fatherhood. Each day, a conscious effort to weave a tapestry of love and security around Lily and Leo. He transformed his study, once a fortress of solitude and work, into a vibrant space filled with Lily's drawings and Leo's colorful toys. He would spend hours on the floor, building towering block castles with Lily, listening intently as she narrated fantastical stories of brave princesses and kind dragons, her imagination slowly unfurling from the constraints Elena had imposed. Her laughter, once hesitant and rare, now bubbled up freely, a joyous sound that echoed through the house, chasing away the lingering ghosts of sadness. She began to draw pictures of their family, bright, cheerful depictions of herself. Leo and Daddy, their hands clasped together, a silent testament to the healing taking place within her young heart. Leo, no longer confined to his crib for extended periods, thrived under David's constant, loving attention. His baby gurgles turned into joyful babbling, his small hands reaching out for David with an unmistakable trust and affection. David would carry him through the gardens, pointing out the vibrant roses and the buzzing bees, his voice soft with endearment, watching as Leo's eyes widened with innocent wonder. The bond between father and son, once nascent, now deepened with every shared moment, every gentle touch, every whispered lullaby. David felt a profound connection to both of his children, a connection that had been tragically interrupted by Clara's departure and then cruelly exploited by Elena, but was now being meticulously rebuilt, brick by painstaking brick, on a foundation of unwavering love and presence. He realized that, in his grief, he'd allowed himself to be emotionally absent, a mistake he was determined to rectify with every fiber of his being, ensuring that his children felt cherished, seen, and utterly safe. The presence of Dr. Sharma continued to be a gentle guiding force in their lives. She helped David understand the nuances of childhood trauma, providing him with tools to foster resilience and emotional expression in Lily. Through play therapy and guided conversations, Lily slowly began to articulate some of her unspoken fears, her anxieties about being left alone, the quiet moments of unkindness she had endured. Dr. Sharma emphasized the importance of validating Lily's feelings, of creating a space where all emotions were accepted and processed, allowing the little girl to gradually shed the protective shell she had built around herself. David learned to listen, not just with his ears, but with his heart, offering reassurance and comfort. His unwavering presence a constant source of strength for his daughter. He understood that healing was a journey, not a destination, and he was committed to walking every step of the way with his children, hand in hand, towards a brighter, more secure future. The estate staff, a small but loyal group, also played an integral role in the family's recovery. Mrs. Henderson, the kind neighbor who had known Clara, often stopped by, bringing homemade cookies and a comforting presence. Her gentle stories balmed Lily's still fragile spirit. The gardener, a man named Thomas, who had worked for the Thorns for decades, would patiently show Lily how to plant seeds, explaining the miracle of growth, a metaphor for their own blossoming family. David ensured that the atmosphere in the home was one of warmth, kindness, and open communication, a stark contrast to the stifling tension that had permeated the air during Elena's tenure. He hosted small family dinners, inviting close friends and trusted relatives, creating a vibrant, supportive community around his children, ensuring they were surrounded by genuine affection and positive influences. The house, once a monument to his solitary grief, was slowly but surely transforming into a lively home, echoing with the sounds of childhood and the comforting rhythm of a family reborn, stronger and more connected than ever before. 2 years unfolded like gentle, healing petals, transforming the Thorne estate from a somber monument to grief into a vibrant sanctuary of life and laughter. The grand living room, once heavy with unspoken anxieties, now echoed with the joyful sounds of childhood. Lily, now a bright-eyed 8-year-old, moved with a newfound confidence, her imagination blossoming freely. She would often be found curled up on the plush sofa, engrossed in a book, or animatedly recounting tales of her day at school to David, her voice clear and full of an infectious enthusiasm that warmed his heart. Her drawings, once hesitant and muted, now burst with color, depicting happy families, sunny gardens, and fantastical creatures, a testament to the vivid inner world she was no longer afraid to share. Leo, now a boisterous 2.5-year-old, was a whirlwind of energy, his chubby legs toddling through the house, his infectious giggles filling every corner. He would often chase Lily through the sprawling gardens, their laughter intertwining with the rustling leaves, or sit contentedly on David's lap during meals, his small hand reaching for a piece of toast, his innocent eyes reflecting the pure joy of a child, cherished and secure. David, for his part, was a transformed man. The hollow, distant millionaire had vanished, replaced by a father deeply, irrevocably connected to his children. His days were no longer consumed by the relentless pursuit of wealth, but by the quiet, profound moments of fatherhood, reading bedtime stories, teaching Lily to ride her bicycle, showing Leo the wonders of a ladybug on a rose petal. He had learned that true richness lay not in his vast fortune, but in the unconditional love that bound his small family together, a love that had proven strong enough to overcome the deepest sorrow and the most insidious betrayal. The gardens, once a symbol of his solitary walks, had become a family project, a vibrant canvas of shared growth. Lily, under Thomas's patient guidance, had her own small patch, where she diligently tended to sunflowers, watching them reach for the sky, a mirror of her own journey. David would often join them, his hands in the soil, feeling the earth, a grounding connection that solidified his presence in the moment. Family meals were now a sacred ritual, filled with lively conversations and shared laughter, a stark contrast to the strained silences of the past. Davies remained a trusted advisor, occasionally visiting for a friendly dinner, witnessing with quiet satisfaction the thriving family she had helped to protect. Dr. Sharma's guidance had gradually tapered, as Lily's resilience and David's unwavering dedication had built an unshakable foundation of emotional well-being. The estate was no longer just a house. It was a home, brimming with warmth, safety, and the enduring power of a love that had been tested and had ultimately triumphed. This story, born from the shadows of loss and betrayal, ultimately became a testament to the unyielding strength of the human spirit and the sacred bond of family. It reminds us that even in the darkest hours, truth has a way of illuminating hidden cruelties, and courage, paired with unwavering love, can reconstruct a shattered world. What would you do to protect the innocence you cherish most? How far would you go to rebuild trust and rekindle hope in the hearts of those who depend on you? Share your thoughts and join us in believing in the power of truth and the enduring magic of unconditional love. Remember, every act of kindness, every moment of presence builds a stronger, more compassionate world, one family at a time.